Okay, let's begin.
Good morning, AM Patriot 1280 listeners. This is Political Pitchforks. I am Susan Smith, longtime conservative activist, and Jeremy Munson, my co-host, is here. And we are extremely excited to welcome this morning Dwight Dorau, and he is running in SD 47 for the Senate seat that could absolutely determine the balance of power in Minnesota, could absolutely shift the dialogue, shift those committees, protect us from omnibus bills. The list will go on and on and on of all the things that will help us if he gets elected this November. So I'm gonna turn over to Jeremy, former legislator, who can open up how important this is.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, everybody listening, I mean, you know that we have a tied house. We had a tied house. They have a special election too, and we had the Democrats had a 1-seat majority in the Senate, and with the resignation of the notorious Democrat Cat Burglar, this seat in our East Metro is up for grabs, and this is a winnable seat for Republicans, especially historically during a special election where Democrats have lower voter turnout than Republicans. Republicans should be laser focused on this district, door knocking, supporting our candidates, supporting all the outside money that's going to come in to win this seat, because it could determine the balance of power, as Susan said. So, Dwight, thank you for coming in, and like all candidates, I'm sure you're going to be hit with the questions from everybody asking why you're running. I understand that you ran before for the House, and you're running for the Senate seat. So, introduce us to yourself and tell us what your kind of top issues are, why you're running.
Okay, so first off, I'd just like to say that I am a lifelong Minnesotan. I was born and raised in Aiken County. I'm a product of the public school system. So I attended Finlayson High School, Brainerd Community College, when it used to be called that. Now it's Central Lakes College, and the University of Minnesota at Duluth. And that leads to my current job. I'm currently in education. So I might be kind of an oddball Republican, if you want to put it that way, where I'm actually teaching inner city students at Johnson High School about Air Force Junior ROTC and how to be good citizens. It's kind of a citizenship class. It's probably the only place I know of right now in our public schools where we say the Pledge of Allegiance every morning still. So it's kind of interesting. In the interim there, I was a 27-year Air Force officer. So coming out of UMD, Duluth, Minnesota, I got my Air Force commission, went on to fly KC-135 air refuelers. I've been in combat zones throughout the world, most of the time in the Middle East, of course, over Afghanistan. I led a squadron of KC-135s there, flying out of Kyrgyzstan over Afghanistan. And so I think I have a really deep appreciation of these kind of subjects where you need to work with people. And that's what I want to bring to this. Now, Jeremy, you mentioned to bring up what are my kind of top issues as well as introducing myself. And Susan, you gave a great lead-in, I think, to the importance of this race, right? So all eyes are on it. I appreciate all support from everybody. Go to votefordwight.com to help me out. But I want to emphasize that it's even more important than just the balance of power in the Senate. The problem is for the residents of Woodbury and South Maplewood, we have not had representation for 2 years from our senator, as Jeremy called her, the cat burglar, right? Nicole Mitchell. She was not allowed to be in a caucus. She was not allowed to be on committees, and she was only there to vote for the trifecta's wishes. Mm-hmm. But it goes deeper than that. So I have two opponents who are battling it out to take me on in the general election. And one is the A-side representative. The other one's the B-side representative. And both of them have done a great disservice to our community as well, because they have not worked with our city councils, with our mayors, with the local people in nonpartisan roles, right? And so I am tied into these people, and I want to restore representation to our district. And that is honestly my number one goal.
I think that actually is a great goal.
Yeah.
Because you represent the people,
Right.
right?
And we have truly had a dearth of it. And it's not just Nicole Mitchell. I want everyone to understand that. You talk to somebody from Maplewood, you talk to somebody from Woodbury, they're going to tell you the same thing. And so I plan on working hand in hand with the city councils to get what we need. And if I may, I know I'm kind of hogging the microphone here,
Oh.
but I want to tell you what our most important issue is in the Woodbury area, and that is clean water. We have all kinds of infrastructure programs going on right now. We have a huge water treatment plant, and our senator and representatives have done next to nothing to get bonding money, next to nothing to get other tax relief, such as sales tax relief for the building products. And then you add to that, it's called the government sharing for communities, money that comes back to help out with real estate. Woodbury in particular has always been paying into this fund, and other communities have benefited from it, but yet Woodbury, now when we have a time of need, we didn't ask for the dirty water, for the PFAS chemicals in our water. We didn't ask for that, and water is non-negotiable. And I'm going to work with the city council, and I've even put Republican senators on notice that this is non-negotiable. We need assistance in Woodbury to help pay for clean water, and that is my number one goal. And I'll work with anybody who is willing to help me with that. So I think I made that one pretty clear.
Yeah. I'm sure that's a popular issue.
It is a popular issue,
Right.
and 3M had a settlement, and they're paying millions of dollars. Now, I have a lot of great friends from 3M. 3M's a great company, and I feel badly about what happened there. But we do need clean water, so I'm drawing my line in the sand. We're going to get it, and we're going to get tax relief, and we're going to get bonding to do it. And if I can't get that accomplished, then what good is anybody if they can't get clean water relief in our community? So that's my number one thing I'm running on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, Dwight, tell us a little bit about going into schools and teaching civics and citizenship to young children. I was invited as a state representative to go in and speak to a group of Boy Scouts to get their citizenship badge, and went through and talked about the Constitution and a lot about citizenship. And they were excited about it. I think it was a great topic, but it's one thing that I think is lacking in our schools. And so God bless you for your work in this, but tell us a little bit about what you do with young students.
Oh yeah, it's such a great program. I wish that every high school in Minnesota could get an ROTC program at the high school level. People who see what we do. Last night, for example, we had a graduation for summer school, and our cadets presented the colors, and they just look so sharp, and they're so proud of what they do. Every class period, we have a day, B day, kind of not all classes like when some of us grew up are in the same day. You alternate Monday and Tuesday and so forth. We say the Pledge of Allegiance every class start period, which is amazing. You see some kids who've never learned to stand up and be proud of their country right there in inner city St. Paul at St. Paul Johnson. It's just amazing. And all of the teachers know the value of the program, regardless of their politics. The principal knows the value of the program, and the kids just eat it up. I'm so happy to do this job. But send me to the Senate. I can do better. Yeah.
I think how many kids are in the program?
We have about 108 right now, but of course we're starting a new school year, so sometimes it goes up to maybe about 125, sometimes a little bit less than 100. It's the largest organization on the school. Yeah. And there's other schools out there that have it as well, Woodbury and other St. Paul schools. Yeah.
Well, I certainly think all children should be taught a civic education. People don't understand how our system works. They really don't.
Right.
Well, as we head to this break, we're looking forward to coming back with the candidate who can help us flip the Senate back to a GOP control. So we'll be back in a few minutes. Thanks for listening.
Okay, let's begin.
Welcome back to Political Pitchforks on AM 1280 The Patriot. I am Susan Smith here with Jeremy Munson and Dwight Dorau, special guest, running for Minnesota Senate District 47. And just briefly, you mentioned pretty extensive service in the military, which, while I'm not in your district, I've been learning about you from people, and it's not something that people are always talking about. And I have to say, I really actually kind of respect that you are, you're leading with your whole you, not just this piece. And sometimes I think people use the military as almost like a way to pander to Republican voters. And I think your career sounds like it was extensive. Yeah. You were in leadership, you were a commander, and that's a different set of skills that you have that a lot of people just don't have that experience. So we are going to, I think, let's move into talking about the military. So Jeremy,
okay,
why don't you take it on?
Dwight, I really appreciate your service to this country, that you've spent your career both in service in the military, in the Air Force, and then also teaching in public schools. Kind of sounds like a model like the Tim Walz model, right? Be a teacher and serve your country.
Ouch.
It should be
that kind of hurts.
You should be a shoo-in.
It's like two options.
There's a piece of legislation that's near and dear to my heart. I did not serve in the military, but there is a great bill called Defend the Guard, or Defend the Guard Act.
Yes.
And for those listening, you can go out to defendtheguard.us and learn about this legislation that many patriots across the country are carrying. In our state, Senator Nathan Wiesenberg is the chief author in the Senate, and Senator Cal Barr is the chief author in the House. Andrew Matthews and Bill Liskey and Drazkowski are also on it in the Senate. And what this bill does is it says that it restricts the governor from sending our National Guard troops overseas unless Congress declares war. And this is, my daughter once asked me about joining the National Guard, and she said, what's the difference between the National Guard and the Army? And I said, in today's world, there's not much.
Yeah.
Right. Your risk of being deployed to, Iraq or wherever is very similar. And because Congress hasn't declared war in decades, this act would be very powerful in focusing the National Guard and actually protecting our homeland, responding to natural disasters, and doing what I believe the National Guard should do. And it's not seen as anti-military. Most of the people carrying this have had a life of service in the military. But from what I know, that you're not intimately familiar with this bill, but from what I've talked about, is this something that you would support?
Yes, that is absolutely something I would support. I like the idea because it not only does protect the troops, maybe your daughter, should she decide to join, but what it also does is it forces the Congress to actually do their mandated constitutional duty, right? I mean, we haven't declared war in many decades. And you think about it, after 9/11, maybe a war should have been declared at that point. And I would think that the Congress would have supported one. Remember the groundswell of support that we had back then? In fact, a little personal note on this is I was about ready to actually leave the Air Force at that point, and 9/11 just inspired me to stay on. I mean, every day I wanted to go after Osama bin Laden and help complete the mission. But at that time, we did not have enough Army and Marine troops primarily to do the mission that we were handed to do. And of course, I'm an airman, so I was at the Combined Air Operations Center in Saudi Arabia, and I was helping to plan operational missions over Afghanistan. But the Army was just completely, to put it in a phrase, out of Schlitz, right? And so I think they would have voted for war if all of the states had a law similar to this. So those names of all the sponsors and supporters, wow, what a top list of the great representatives and senators we have in Minnesota. And I look forward to getting into office and working with them to get this into reality. Absolutely.
Yeah, in several states have passed this bill. In fact, Texas just passed this last year.
That's great.
So it's not like it's a liberal or a conservative bill. It was very bipartisan. And as an author of this bill, you can, tap into this national movement to bring in testifiers to the bill. They have tons of facts and figures on this bill, but it would be a great constitutional bill that I think both Republicans and Democrats should support. It's one that I hope would help you at the door when you're talking to people about the military, and maybe adding some restriction not only on the president, who might be asking the governors to send the troops overseas, but on the governor itself. So
And
it's a great bill.
Yeah, and I think for people who don't have experience in the military, which is most of America, right?
Yeah.
That this awareness of whether you want to call them the endless wars or it doesn't matter. We've made it very easy for Congress to send the National Guard overseas, which is easier, I think, for them to do than actually declaring war. Right? And so to me, I just think that this holds everybody accountable. It will also help people understand what the Guard is supposed to do. And right now, we're obviously in huge debates across this country as Donald Trump is bringing in the Guard to try and defend D.C., and there's issues about that there aren't really any. I mean, for the most part, that is not a state,
Right.
And it's
Right.
but yet when we talk about our major cities, Americans have no problem sending our military into some other country's major city to defend that major city.
Yeah.
But people are really starting to question, okay, we understand we don't want the military invading all of our streets. But when our cities are burning, when crime is out of control, and our state police and our local police forces cannot handle the crime, and they can't defend the American people from an onslaught of crime, but they
Right.
can go. Really, honestly, I think people all over the country are questioning,
Yeah.
well, what is the,
And
how
that's,
does this all make, why are we sending them anywhere then?
And that's their
Right?
state role, right? Their state role is in the military, we call it Title 32 because they fall under that for being guardsmen and guardswomen. Title 10 is national, right? So when they nationalize the Guard, that's kind of the problem, right? And I think the appetite is definitely not a partisan appetite for cutting down on the forever wars. So Republicans and Democrats, I think, would love to get behind this initiative, and I hope it takes off throughout the country. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Another issue I'd like to talk about is freedom of speech. And everybody seems like they're behind it until they hear speech that they don't like. And then all of us, so, I'm a free speech absolutist, and that means that I frequently defend speech that I hate, in order to make sure that we have free speech. And I think political speech is the most important speech because it's the reason why we have that. We don't want government to silence people. I have to constantly remind Republicans and Democrats that freedom of speech means the government can't restrict your speech. It doesn't mean that your employer can't, or other restrictions on it
Right.
privately.
Yeah.
But about 10 years ago, or over the last 10 years, there was a crackdown on free speech on college campuses where Democrats were preventing conservative speakers to come on college campuses. And I fought for freedom of speech back then. And then recently we've had my own party restricting free speech on college campus, where people are speaking out against their support for, or speaking out against Israel, or speaking in support of Palestine. And there's been a restriction, people talking about getting rid
Right.
of student visas if they say something or in support of something. That, again, that's an attack on free speech. And I think that there's opportunity for a bipartisan effort to promote free speech. In Minnesota, in our Constitution, we don't have a freedom of speech clause. Many states do. We don't. We have it at the federal level, but if you want to sue under free speech, you have to sue in federal court because we don't have anything in Minnesota that protects freedom of speech, except one clause in our Constitution which protects it for the media and for legislators, but not the general public.
Yeah.
And so I was working on legislation to add freedom of speech in our state constitution so that you can sue and get something quickly adjudicated in state court, especially around campaigns and on college campuses where we were having restrictions at the University of Minnesota and other state colleges that said we only have freedom of speech in this this area of the mall or in, these areas on campus, which was, again, a restriction on freedom of speech. Where do you stand on freedom of speech? And do you see this as an issue that could be supported by you in the legislature?
Absolutely. We absolutely need to have freedom of speech in our society. It drives everything. Political speech and not harmful, but mean-spirited speech, that is protected as well. You have to have it.
Well, just so you know, we have laws
Yeah.
that say that if I say something
Like threatening.
that may not even be threatening, because I don't even have to say something. If you just feel like I was threatening, that's the standard now.
Yeah.
In laws, particularly probably that would be used to target conservatives.
Sure.
So we have walked down a terrible path.
Yeah, these
Terrible
past
path.
few years especially.
In Minnesota, and an interplay between religious liberty and freedom of speech is in our universities. And I have a daughter who was told, not her personally, the entire classroom was told that if anybody brought up being anti-gay marriage or anti-LGBTQ issues, they would be reported for hate speech to the university.
Hate speech, yeah.
And hate speech. Yeah. And so we've gone a long way from sticks and stones and
Right.
names will never hurt me
Right.
to it's almost worse
Yeah.
in our society today.
In some ways, yeah.
If you say
People are getting, banned, I guess is the word, or what's the popular phrase for when they put you aside?
Like on Twitter when they put you
Yeah,
in like,
I think you're thinking of deplatform.
Yes,
Yep.
deplatforming people and that type of thing. Just for the record, I have never deleted anybody from my personal social media. And I do have many friends who disagree strongly with me, and I let them say what they want.
Right.
So come to my website, come to my social media for free speech.
yeah, it's the only way. We have to be open to letting people say what they
Absolutely.
need to be heard. We'll be back in a few minutes. Thanks for listening.
Okay, let's begin.
Welcome back, listeners. This is Political Pitchforks. I am Susan Smith here with Jeremy Munson, my co-host. And today we have on Dwight Dorau, candidate for Senate District 47. And our hope is that he helps flip the Senate back to Republican control. And there are so many issues that we could be talking about. I think an issue for you that is very interesting and should be of interest to everybody is the issue of energy, clean energy. And I think just energy in general, because as our costs are going up, we have to be looking at alternatives. And we know on our forefront are these data centers, which are sucking in incredible amounts of power, putting at risk all of our usage, but also financially, our costs are skyrocketing with energy. So Jeremy, you were on the Energy Committee when you served.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, for the listeners, I want to clear it up. We're not talking about flipping the control to the Republican control. What Dwight's victory in this race would mean is that the Senate would be tied.
Yeah, that's right.
And then the House would be tied, which is kind of operating under a power sharing agreement. But the House being tied just basically defers control of the legislature to the Senate, where the Democrats had this 1-seat majority with the Cat Burglar. So if the Senate was tied, then we actually would have equal control of the legislature, and that would be such an enormous victory. Yes, I served on the Energy Committee all 3 terms that I was in the House of Representatives. It wasn't my issue that got me off the couch and made me run for office, but boy, did I dig deep into it when I was elected and on this committee. And I'll tell you, Dwight, when you're campaigning in a swing district, I think it's important to explain to the voters that we all want the same thing. We want clean air. We want clean water. We just have different paths to get there. I think Republicans support free markets more than government mandates. And when government has mandates, there's a lot of fraud and corruption, and all the lobbyists and special interests come out.
Right.
When I was elected and I met with the Xcel Energy lobbyists, they came into my office and I'm like, hey, how do we stop all these, stupid subsidies towards green energy, which actually causes more environmental damage overseas with the mining and the processing and all the slavery and stuff. How do we stop the government marching down this path? And he said, Representative Munson, you don't understand. Xcel Energy supports these initiatives because It just mandates that we do these things and we make tons of money. And we're a publicly traded company, a public utility, and this is great for our investors. So we don't mind these mandates. We just we want to make sure that we're involved in all the solutions. I mean, there's nobody looking out for ratepayers. And what bothered me the most about an energy policy is the Democrats' opposition to nuclear, because our 3 reactors we have in Minnesota take the equivalent of 2 million cars off the road as far as carbon dioxide each year.
Right.
This is a huge win, right?
It is.
But they oppose it, and the reactors are supposed to end in the 2030s, like 10 years from now. And there's deferred maintenance that they want to do on these things, but they're not going to invest $100 million in repairing these things if they have to shut down. So where are you on nuclear and this carbon-free energy,
Right.
or are you all of the above,
Yep.
or are you bought and paid for by the coal industry?
No, none of the above there. But you mentioned a really interesting word there. You said solutions, right? When you were going through that, and that is one of the things that the DFL, the Democrats, did not do. They came up with this great picture of how we're all going to be carbon free or carbon neutral by the year 2040, and yet that passed like this, right? It passed really quickly. Full Democrat support on down the line, and yet, kind of like with education, all the unfunded education mandates. This one has no solution for how we get there. And Jeremy, you talked about, and I really appreciate your time in the House and your perspective there. It's perfect because nuclear, we know, is very safe. In fact, one of the very latest nuclear plants to open, I believe it was down in Georgia, might have been South Carolina, brand new plant, huge added safety features. Our plants here in Minnesota have been built in the 70s, the one in Monticello and the one down by Red Wing. And my view is if they're already putting out 25 or more % of the energy a day, let's double that capacity. Let's get rid of our nuclear moratorium, which would take a ballot initiative for the voters. And what a wonderful way to actually not just say we're going to be carbon free or carbon neutral, but actually let's start coming up with some solutions for getting there. Now, Jeremy, you mentioned all of the above. Yes, I'm fine with wind. I'm fine with hydro. I'm fine with solar. These things are all fine with me, but I want to leave it up to the economy to decide that, right? Like if you want to put some solar panels on your home, go for it. Knock yourself out. I have some neighbors. They love it. But it should be all of the above in that case, yes. So, but the nuclear should not be a hard thing to get to. And it's really just thinking harder about how we get to some of these places. And if we have time later, we can talk about the education mandates. Same way, mandates, but no solutions on how to achieve those. So,
Yeah, the Democrats are very careful in how they did the 100% green energy mandates, because they didn't make it a law that they have to be. They enacted this as their goal. But since all of the energy companies know what that goal is, they can then go to the Public Utilities Commission and say, "Hey, we're gonna spend all this more money on these initiatives because that's the goal." And then the Public Utilities Commission rubber stamps it, and then we get increases in our rates as ratepayers. We have some of the highest electricity costs in the nation, and it's going absolutely sky high.
Yeah.
And I live in the country, so my bill is probably more than yours, but I pay $600 or $700 a month for my power.
Yeah.
And people on social media that follow me know that I have horrible power and I have outages all the time on Excel. And so it's been a frustration of mine. But I would encourage everybody to, if you're interested in energy policy, to go to misoenergy.org, which is MISO energy.org. It is the grid that we are a member of in Minnesota. Stretches from North Dakota, Minnesota down to Texas, and it shows you a fuel mix, or where we're getting all of our power: coal, nuclear, solar, imported stuff, natural gas, wind. Even a day like yesterday, Friday, we were importing energy because we're not creating enough of it, mostly because it's maybe overcast and we're thinking solar is going to kick in, but it doesn't.
Right.
And it's really important to get somebody in the legislature on our side that can fight for the ratepayers and not either fight for
Absolutely.
the industry, the lobbyists, or other actors involved in this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just think it's amazing that they've been able to convince not just Minnesotans, but Americans of this idea that solar power and wind power is somehow going to save us. And not only is it not going to save us, but it's causing incredible harm and damage to the environment and to people.
Yeah.
So the very people who claim to be eco-friendly,
Yeah.
more than happy to kill the bees, the birds, the bats, the everything, and all necessary, by the way.
Yeah.
All necessary, really, especially in some of the farming communities and rural areas. I mean, you need those, and gone, and it's incredible. So we just have spent all this money on infrastructure that doesn't work, when we could be spending it on infrastructure
that
does work.
Absolutely.
A couple of bills that I carried that I would hope, if you're interested in energy policy, you might pick up are around green energy. I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't spend money on solar or wind, but I carried a bill that would require that wind turbines, when dismantled, have to be, like the wind turbine blades, for instance, they used to be made out of fiberglass, and then they were so brittle they were breaking all the time. So then they decided to make them out of what's called GRP, or glass wrapped plastic, or something like that. And it melds plastic and glass as they make it. They lay it out together. Well, because they have different melting points, you can't break them up and recycle them.
Yeah.
And so they have in Minnesota has banned the disposal of wind turbine blades in our state. So we ship them to Casper, Wyoming, where there is over 30 million pounds of glass and plastic buried in the landfills out there. Now, what I talked about frequently on the Energy Committee wasn't about the source of our fuel, but it was about the economic damage that the supply chain of each fuel source creates.
Right.
Nuclear, although it's carbon free, I always said it's not carbon free, but there's some carbon used on the concrete and the making and the fly ash and everything in creating the power plant.
Yeah.
But it's a very small amount. Hydroelectric, same thing. Lots of concrete, but great 24-hour a day power. Solar and wind, while they create carbon-free energy during the day, the manufacturing process to create those panels, to create the wind farms, and the disposal of everything has enormous carbon footprints, and we need to assess that, plus the human cost with slavery and the supply chain and things like that. So I hoped to put those all together, but I had a bill that said we have to dispose of the blades in Minnesota, and that we shouldn't be using taxpayer dollars to fund solar panels, which were manufactured using slavery. And because China has over 1 million Muslim Uyghurs in concentration camps manufacturing solar panels for the U.S. market.
It's incredible.
Both of those were rejected by Democrats, but that is something that we should be addressing on the green energy supply chain.
That should be completely bipartisan. And Jeremy, I'm going to take you up. When I'm on your offer here, when I'm in the Senate, I'm going to carry the water on those. And it just makes such sense that we follow this line of thinking as we try to move towards these great grandiose solutions or goals, I should say, without having the solutions thought out ahead of time. So I'm very happy to take up energy policy. In fact, the committees I want to be on, if you're probably not surprised, but the Energy Committee is one of them. No surprise, I want to be on the Veterans Committee, and no surprise, I want to be on the Education Committee. Now, I'd also love to get into the Finance Committee, but I know you need some seniority. But let me tell you, this is my warning to the Republicans in the Senate. I have some demands for Woodbury and Maplewood due to our lack of representation these past few years.
Yep. Well, everybody's represented to represent their constituents.
Exactly.
And we need more of them to do that.
Yep.
We'll be back.
Okay, let's begin.
Welcome back, Patriot listeners. This is Susan Smith here with Jeremy Munson on Political Pitchforks. As is always true on Saturday mornings, this hour goes really fast. Today we have Dwight Dorau, who is running in SD 47 and is going to hopefully flip his seat back to Republicans and affect the legislature. I think we should all be helping to put forward Dwight's campaign. And as we ended the last segment, Jeremy had a story he didn't quite have time to tell. That he'd like to tell, and so I'm going to hand it over to Jeremy.
Yeah, well, Dwight, I love your initiative on energy policy, and I think that we can do so much more in explaining energy policy to the other side of the aisle to bring them to come together on this, because there's this false perception that Republicans are all like big coal or whatever. I used to give speeches on energy policy, and I went to the University of Minnesota, Mankato State to speak to a bunch of students, and a bunch of Democrats came out there from the College Democrats to think I was going to be talking about coal, and instead I talked about all of the above energy policy. The environmental destruction, and these are the kids that were told that the world was going to end in 12 years because of climate change, and so they were excited to hear about a lot of stuff I was talking about, the smart grid and appliances being able to talk to each other so they can load balance and reducing our overall demand for power, which is going to help us in the long run, along with nuclear and clean energy initiatives, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I was preparing for the speech, and of course I was talking about slavery in the supply chain, and I had these images of these child slaves mining cobalt in the Congo and all the destruction in China. And the guy on the plane next to me, as I was preparing the speech, was watching my presentation, and he was a big liberal, drove a hybrid, and I explained this whole thing to him over the course of an hour, and he said, "You know what? You've completely ruined this for me, because I thought I was saving the world by buying an electric car or doing these things, and finding out that recycling isn't actually sent to recycling anymore. It all goes to the landfill." And he was so upset. And his teenage daughter next to him was also almost to tears. And then when we went to the baggage claim at the airport in Minneapolis, and there was those garbage cans at the airport that say trash to energy, and it has like a green leaf with a extension cord and a plug coming out of it.
Yeah.
And she was throwing her, Starbucks cup in the trash, and she said, "Look, Dad, trash to energy." And he looked over at me, and I said, "They burn it." That's what they do. That's
true.
how they make trash to energy. They bring it to the local, incinerator, and they burn it. All that plastic and garbage that goes in the air. Yeah. And so he just shook his head. There's a realization that Democrats need to learn about energy policy, where we need to be honest with each other, and then talk about all of the above solutions in order to reduce the environmental impact and make a better planet. And I think you could bring a lot of good initiatives to the energy committee to move those issues forward.
Yeah, I sure hope so. And not even in the energy area alone. We talked about how I'm going to go back to the Woodbury and Maplewood local scene again, right? So I started off by saying we have not had good representation at the local level. It seems like our senator and our representatives got elected, and they fell in lockstep with the Democrat caucus. At the debate that I had with my opponent last time, he actually said that he puts the caucus above everybody else, everything else. That's his focus, is his caucus. And I hope that after I defeat one of them, when we figure out which one is running against me, which, by the way, they're creating yet another special election by running for Senate, even though they've both been elected to the House, right? But after I win, I'm going to do this bipartisan thing as best I can. And, I'm going to call out a couple names in Woodbury alone. So in the past, we've had Democrats and Republicans, and I know bipartisanship seems impossible, right? But at the local level, it's not working when we've had the Democrat trifecta. So Susan Kent, for example, and Kathy Salzman, both Democrats, but both were clearly willing to go and talk to Republicans and talk to local city council and mayors and get things done for the local level. On the Republican side, I think of Kelly Fenton and Mary Giuliani Stevens, the same way, right? So we may have very different worldviews, and I know we do, and so does this audience. We know that our worldview is set in common sense and, faith in our country, faith in our way that we bring up our children, and just to become great Americans, going back to these civics classes, right, that are so lacking right now. But at the local level, for goodness sakes, can we just get together and help our local communities? Right. Woodbury and Maplewood have lost out on a lot of money these past 2 to 3 years, and I really need to turn this around, and that's what I pledged to do.
That sounds great. So many legislators talk about, I want to be bipartisan, I want to work across the aisle. And what really gets in the way is your party's leadership in St. Paul. And whoever's in the majority takes these great bipartisan bills, like veterans' homes or whatever,
right,
and then starts to wrap those great bills with partisan crap in these omnibus bills, these multi-subject omnibus bills. They bring in stuff that has nothing to do with whatever's at the core of these bills until the minority says, no, I can't do it. That's too far. And then they peel off one layer and then pass these big multi-subject omnibus bills to the disgust of many. And that culture is what really needs to stop. The founders of our state knew about this. They called it log rolling, when the majority log rolls the minority.
Yeah.
And so they put into our state constitution the requirement that every bill have a single subject, and that the subject be expressed in its title. And this is frequently abused by both parties. Whoever's in majority, they create these monstrosities that the lobbyists and special interests love. And what I ask is that you be consistent and say, look, I support single subject bills. I think we should have more votes, which means more accountability, more transparency into the legislative process.
It's the only way.
And I'll understand that you're going to vote for some bills that might give me heartburn, but at least everything is on record on how you vote.
Exactly.
You and I have a mutual friend that called me after he had a very disturbing conversation with I'm not going to say who, a politician talking about this very issue. And this man was saying to his representative, you're not representing us. You're just not representing us. And the response was, you just don't understand how it works in St. Paul.
Yeah.
And of course, the two of us are talking and saying, no, we all understand how it works in St. Paul. That's the problem.
That's the problem, yes.
We're not asking you to bring St. Paul to your district. We're asking you to make sure your district is represented in St. Paul. It's
Absolutely.
a tremendous failing of our politicians.
I think so too. And my ultimate goal is to represent the citizens of Woodbury and Maplewood very, very well. A year and a half from now, I want to be able to run into constituents around town and to say, you know what, you were supporting us well. We may not, Democrat friends of mine, they may not agree with certain bills that I voted on, but as far as representation, which is sorely lacking, I'm going to do it well. That's my goal. And go to votefordwight.com.
It's the 4 spelled out.
Yep. Right? It's vote4 Dwight.com. And you can read more about what I plan to do there, because I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to make sure I got that plug in time.
Yeah.
Dwight, I want to ask you about another issue I think would be important too. And then this is, as a Republican, I like local control. I like small government. I think that, townships and cities and counties should have a stronger say, and school boards should have a stronger say than the state legislature or the federal government.
Yes.
And so when it comes to issues of local control, it's difficult to be consistent, because when I was in the legislature, one of the things Republicans did when they were in the majority is they wanted to prevent local cities from making certain decisions, whether it was on housing ordinances or on like setting their own minimum wage. I would rather have the city of Minneapolis implement a $50 minimum wage than have Democrats try to do this statewide.
Right.
Because I would say, you want to experiment with your own city? Fine. Drive the businesses out to greater Minnesota. But I prefer local control, and I try to be consistent on that. Where are you on this? Do you support state over local, or do you support local control?
This is one of the key factors. I am completely about local control. our Woodbury City Council is doing an amazing job. Nonpartisan people, they're awesome. I love what they're doing. I'm meeting with the Maplewood City Manager soon to see what he needs and how they're operating. So also the education mandates. They gave all these mandates to our schools, and South Washington County is now in the red, and we're going to have to raise taxes there. So just to cover 65 new mandates worth about $1 billion, and we didn't even talk about going over budget. But thank you.
That's a tremendous problem. Well, we really appreciate you being on. I wish you luck and encourage people to go to your website.
Thank you.
And absolutely help out. So thank you all for listening to Political Pitchforks, and we look forward to next week.
Thank you.